but now you're going to have to take figure out how to get through it. Drive an Uber or whatever. Go off to the beach, find a cheap place to live and go to the beach for a year.
Those remarks coming from former PlayStation boss Chris Deering, and they are aimed at the 30,000 or so developers that have been laid off in the last 3 years in the gaming industry. Drive an Uber or go to the beach for a year is truly one of the most out-of-touch things a gaming executive has said in the last week. Yeah, it really is just about a week. And the video game layoffs are not slowing down at all. Recently, Ready at Dawn, best known for their work on the Order 1886, were shut down by Meta. Rocksteady, after spending a decade on a live service failure that cost Warner Brothers a couple $100 million, is also downsized. Just after reporting record-breaking profit for Xbox, the gaming division is also again being hit with layoffs. 1 month before Until Dawn releases on PC, in the UK studio Ballistic Moon significantly scaled down their team. Not slowing down at all are these layoffs. Logitech, about a month ago, talked about their vision of the Forever Mouse, which surely enough includes a subscription. CEO Hinek Faber saying a mouse that requires a regular fee for software updates is possible. And now Logitech has backtracked, saying that they have no plans of this, but never say never with these corpos, because this is what they want. The Witcher 4 is moving along. The game is set to enter full production very soon from CD Projekt Red, and as was also said recently, the game is in the most advanced state out of any of their upcoming projects, with over 400 developers currently working on this new saga. At this moment, we still don't have a great grasp on the direction that they plan to take with this next Witcher game, except that Geralt of Rivia will not be returning as the lead protagonist, a revelation that was announced 8 years ago with his iconic goodbye in the Blood and Wine DLC. Tango Gameworks earlier this year suffered a shocking and sudden shutdown by Microsoft, this coming after what was declared by the company as a success with Hi-Fi Rush, Tango's award-winning most recent game. Now though, the studio has been revived and transferred over to Krafton, publisher of PUBG. With this happening a couple of months after the studio's closure, it comes as no surprise that a lot of developers have moved on. Krafton saying in a statement that they hope to inherit the entire development team, but unfortunately only half of the team was retained, the others likely already finding new work. Krafton also announced that the Tango staff would be transferred over to a subsidiary of theirs to work on new projects and an expansion to the Hi-Fi Rush IP. I'm still not sure why Microsoft didn't sell this studio off from the get-go, but at the very least, Tango lives on. Gamescom was a bit underwhelming this year, and to be fair, outside of Xbox's showcase this summer, a lot of gaming events have felt that way throughout this year. Still though, Dying Light the Beast looks pretty exciting with Kyle Crane returning. We also did see the announcement of Borderlands 4 and Mafia the Old Country. The latter is what I'm most excited for, as is described as a gritty mob story set in the brutal underworld of 1900 Sicily, which explores the origins of organized crime. Nick Baines, president of Hangar 13, has also said this new game will be going back to the roots of what fans love about the Mafia franchise, with a deep linear narrative, which sounds more Mafia 2 than Mafia 3, and I think that's the smart decision. Speaking of Borderlands 4, which comes right after the massive movie flop, in which CEO Randy Pitchford bizarrely compared it to the Beatles and had a meltdown over its failure, well, Randy is now reflecting on yet another thing that has aged like shit. In 2019, Borderlands 3 made a deal with the Epic Games Store, and Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford loudly declared at the time, "We look back at Steam in 5 or 10 years, it may look like a dying store, and other competitive stores will be the place to be." And that didn't happen at all. Surely enough, 5 years later, Borderlands 4 is indeed crawling back to Steam. Pitchford was getting clowned on social media, thus leading him to addressing his poorly aged remark, acknowledging Epic has failed in their mission to make a mark, and that he wasn't anti-Steam but more pro-competition, and that he just wanted a more favorable platform towards artists, developers, and creators, the same individuals that he screwed over with Borderlands 3 bonuses. Randy is not a good person. Anthem will go down in the history books as one of the biggest video game failures ever. Geez, a line that I cannot stop saying the last couple of weeks. But now BioWare is saying that they've learned a lot of lessons from that live service disaster. Creative director John Epler, while promoting the upcoming new Dragon Age installment, saying, "We're a studio that has always been built around digging deep on storytelling and role-playing. I'm proud of a lot of things on Anthem. I was on the project for a year and a half, but at the end of the day, we were building a game focused on something that we were not necessarily as proficient at. For me and for the team, the biggest lesson was to know what you're good at and then double down on it. Don't spread yourselves too thin. Don't try to do a bunch of different things you don't have the expertise to do. A lot of the people on this team came here to build a story-focused single-player RPG. And one aspect of Anthem that never gets talked about enough is just how god-awful the narrative content of that game was. And forgettable. The only thing I remember is, remember, the bloodline dies in the first few minutes, there's a lot of flying, and antagonist looks like Elon Musk, and at one point there's 3 versions of one guy. That's it. This is one of my big concerns with EA BioWare moving forward, and we'll soon find out if those issues remain. The studio was once at the top of the industry in terms of story-focused single-player RPG, but this isn't the same BioWare. Most of the devs of those past beloved games are long gone, and new EA BioWare has a lot to prove, especially following a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which set a new standard for AAA developers of RPGs. When Henry Cavill departed from The Witcher and then jumped onto the Amazon Warhammer 40k show, there was immediate excitement as he was set to star, deeply passionate for the franchise, and had some sort of creative control as executive producer, something that wasn't really the case with Netflix's The Witcher, as there had been well-documented cases of Cavill clashing with the showrunner Lauren Hissrich. Unfortunately, though, it looks like the show, this Warhammer 40k show, may never see the light of day. In recent weeks, Games Workshop, the owners of the franchise, reiterated that if they can't agree with Amazon on creative guidelines by December 2024, the show isn't happening. What are these creative guidelines? We don't really know, except for some unflattering rumors of Amazon's writing team and recent controversial changes that Games Workshop made to the franchise. Cavill might have some of the worst luck with these Hollywood studios. At the very least, and Cavill included, we do have Space Marines 2 right now, which is pretty awesome and it appears a massive success. Avowed is one of the big releases of next year, just recently delayed to early 2025, and yet another upcoming Xbox game that doesn't plan to support 60 FPS. One of the big features that Xbox touted before this console generation began as the standard moving forward, with even 120 FPS being the new upper limit for what upcoming games might target. I guess not actually, and those are Xbox's words, not mine. Obsidian's Matt Henson, art director on Avowed, said on the Iron Lords podcast about this decision, stating that 30 FPS will be the bare minimum for Avowed, but that the team isn't necessarily aiming for more than that. Hansen went on to say that 60 FPS isn't as important in single-player role-playing games, and that the lower FPS target allows Obsidian to double down on more advanced VFX, visual density, and lighting. A statement that I could understand maybe a decade ago, but nowadays, nope. No. Especially for a game like Avowed, which still has you doing a lot of combat and exploration in first person, the difference between 30 FPS and 60 FPS would be night and day. And it appears most gamers prefer better performance, a more fluid gaming experience than slightly prettier graphics. This is a disappointing revelation for a game that feels like it's been drastically scaled back since it was announced. I feel like every once in a while you just have to acknowledge the brilliance of Hello Games and No Man's Sky. Every few months another massive free update is released. Truly astonishing what can be done when shareholders aren't the driving force of a game company. In July, the game received a massive overhaul, and now the newest update, Aquarius, introduces alien fishing with bait, diving suits, new cooking recipes, a personal fishing platform, and much more. Astro Bot was a charming platformer that celebrated the history of PlayStation. It likely will be a major Game of the Year contender later this year, and one former PlayStation developer absolutely hates how it used his character. Former Days Gone creative director John Garvin tweeting he's unhappy that Deacon St. John, the protagonist of Days Gone, has been reduced to a cartoon shill promoting some small game, which I definitely disagree with that assessment. If anything, I'm glad Deke is still being acknowledged, and as someone who enjoys Days Gone a lot, I still hold out hope that one day we do see a sequel. Although it does seem as of late there's been disagreement for why one hasn't already happened, with some reports indicating Ben's studio themselves decided not to proceed forward due to the poor sales of the first game, and then there's Garvin, who is no longer at Sony, blaming them. A year ago, Unity made one of the most dumbest greedy decisions ever with introducing the runtime fee, which, as GamesDeveloper.com points out, sought to charge developers a per-install tariff once projects had passed certain milestones. It was a decision that left many users reeling, resulting in a colossal backlash that ultimately forced the company to rework, but not ditch, the policy. Many game developers vowed to ditch using Unity, and it led to Unity's CEO and president John Riccitiello departing the company, Unity Create boss Mark Whitten eventually followed suit as well. Now though, the new leadership team is ditching the runtime fee and reverting back to its existing seat-based subscription model, albeit with a price increase for Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise users. Many have pointed out this isn't an act of kindness, but rather profits were likely not going their way with the controversial fee, thus they reverted. Maybe too little too late. Bungie, which is quite frankly collapsing with the Final Shape underperforming, mass layoffs at the studio, projects being cancelled, veteran talent departing in protest, the company's CEO being criticized for his vintage car purchases, Marathon not being in a good state and compared to Suicide Squad, that game's director being outed for misconduct and fired, well, things are continuing to crumble. The company's recent partnership with Nerf is under fire as it appears they stole 9-year-old fan art for the design of the gun. The Ace of Spades is one of Destiny 2's most iconic weapons, and the featured fan art of that gun alongside the Nerf gun makes clear that it was indeed stolen. Bungie says they are investigating, but not much investigation needed when it's this blatant. I suppose the question is, how far into production are they for this toy, and can this be rectified without having to result in legal matters? Regardless, the next Destiny project has apparently been leaked, and no, it is not Destiny 3, but a mobile game called Destiny Rising from NetEase. Gaming insider of Giant Bomb Jeff Grubb confirmed the project was alive and an announcement would be coming soon. In terms of gameplay and genre, Grubb also revealed that it's going to be Destiny on mobile, but with a lot of changes. Hero characters instead of building your own character, for example. As one might expect, the Destiny community is not very thrilled about their own Diablo Immortal coming very soon. Grand Theft Auto 6 has gone about 9 months without an update, and very likely before the year ends, we should at the very least see something. I would assume trailer 2 with a focus on the game's second protagonist, Jason. Recently this last week, there was an explosion in concerns that the game had been delayed to 2026, but Bloomberg's Jason Schreier shut this rumor down, saying nothing had happened, but there was still a chance the game eventually slips to 2026. As someone who has spoken to a few developers in August, I reported that a source at Rockstar doesn't right now believe the game will be finished by next year, a feeling colleagues of theirs hold as well. Regardless, none of that is definitive, just one department's position. Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar, did recently break some news by taking a swing at Xbox and their decision to make Black Ops 6 a day one on Game Pass release. CEO Strauss Zelnick saying in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, "I think that offering a frontline title with a premium price and a subscription service day and date will push consumers to that subscription service for at least a period of time." And then asked if they would do something like this, Zelnick said, "No, it won't affect our decisions because our decisions are rational." GTA Plus likely will be a major part of GTA 6, but one thing is clear, the game won't be there day one, and that seems to go for any of Take-Two's upcoming games. And financially speaking, a game like Grand Theft Auto 6 being in a subscription service day one would lose Take-Two a lot of money, so it's understandable to see why Zelnick has almost disgust at the idea of them ever doing it. War never changes. That is the tagline of the Fallout franchise, how the games open and close. It is also the central theme of Fallout, war. But in recent years, there's been a twisting of this. A lot of individuals arguing it's actually not about war, but a critique of capitalism. This narrative has only been advanced further because of the Fallout TV show, when you have all the corporations coming together talking about bringing the world to an end, which definitely doesn't make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things because, well, China is behind it. This is something that Tim Kaine, the co-creator of Fallout, revealed a couple of years ago. China was aggressive. They launched the nukes first. That is what happened. That's why a lot of people take issue with the Fallout TV show with some of the things that they're exploring, but also it's none of that is definitive because there's a shadowy figure in the background of that same scene, which clearly is probably an operative of the Enclave who is really, making the chess moves, but doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things because China is the ones who launched the nukes. And that's why, again, a lot of people have issues with the lore and some of the decisions that they've made with the Fallout TV show. But specifically, Tim Kaine talked about capitalism in a recent video. He is the co-creator of the Fallout franchise, and this was just a general discussion on the topic. But where things get really juicy is when he was asked directly about Fallout with capitalism. And he said that the critique of capitalism was never the point of the games. Within this PC Gamer article, it says, in response to a fan asking about Kaine's view in Fallout, as a critique of capitalist corporative greed, Kaine's response was unequivocal. Critique of capitalism was never the point of Fallout. How can you tell? Because the game went out of its way to mention that other countries like China were also behaving terribly. And again, China dropped the bombs first. And he did continue saying, if anything, Fallout is a comment that war is inevitable given basic human nature. And then he continued further saying, I don't think I have any themes that run in common in all my games. Maybe mistrust of power, said Kane, but people will interpret my games in all kinds of ways, and that's okay. Everyone brings their own perspective, and a story can mean different things to different people. But ultimately, the people that have been writing, making these games, they've been pretty clear that no, this game is not about capitalist, it's not a critique of capitalism, or it's at least not a main theme that they've been exploring at all. And this ultimately led to a number of subreddits and individuals attacking Tim Kaine for his position on this. On the Gaming Circle Jerk subreddit, we had this top comment saying the series where the main antagonist is an evil corporation is, check notes, not a critique of capitalism, you guys. And yeah, the comments to this is it's as expected with Reddit. You mean America isn't rebels in Star Wars? Some of the other comments, this was also on the Fallout subreddit, which the comment by Tim Kaine was actually taken down because I guess the Fallout moderators don't want to have this as a discussion. I am filing this under artists not understanding their own art, right up there with Ray Bradbury insisting Fahrenheit 451 isn't about censorship. Another individual saying he is really wrong, even if it was subconscious. A critique of capitalism is inherently in the game at all its turns. Another person saying, yeah, but the beauty of text is that they aren't beholden to the author's intent. We redefine and interpret text as readers. Another individual saying it's crazy how even an author can misunderstand their work. Fallout was always about the consequences of capitalism. I think it does, but it was made by capitalists, so they have a blind spot to it and didn't realize they did that. And as I documented on my own Twitter account, this was removed from the Fallout subreddit after receiving over 2,000 upvotes, which Reddit moderators gonna Reddit moderate. And we actually even saw Chris Avellone, one of the lead developers, designer on some of those earlier Fallout games, also was a major developer on Fallout New Vegas, chiming in saying, let's ask the creator of Fallout what he thinks about things and then not care what he thinks. And he did continue pointing out that war never changes is just too subtle, as one commenter put it, and he said, well, he's mocking here, humans have never waged war or harmed each other for any reason other than capitalism. No one with an intelligence above 3 ever, which that's funny. And it is worth mentioning, when he was reviewing the Fallout TV show, Chris Avellone did continue further, pointing out that capitalism, again, is not about Fallout. He reaffirmed this perspective. He said, in some major themes like capitalism, which was never part of the original Fallout premise, despite what you may think, capitalism equaling evil is a modern shout topic, and it's not surprising that Hollywood leans on that for a big reveal. And we did see this continue even further because we saw Bethesda lead writer Emil Pagliarlo, I said that probably wrong, but he chimed in about Tim Kaine's remarks saying, oh, interesting, well, I think Tim is a great guy and I agree with his take 100%. I mean, it's war never changes for a reason. And it is worth mentioning that once again, Emil was attacked for these remarks, people saying, weird how even someone as high up as you can suffer from poor media literacy. Jesus. And it didn't matter because like you can see right here, we have a post with 66,000 upvotes, which totally redefines Fallout 4 and lies about how the game opens up. Fallout 4 literally opens with a door-to-door salesman. No, he's a Vault-Tec rep, basically selling a chance of survival to rich people. No, I mean, Nate is a veteran of the previous war, but when the bombs drop, that salesman dies because he couldn't afford it. No, because he was not a part of the Vault-Tec experiment with that specific vault. It's like these individuals do not at all play these games or are not at all paying attention to anything. And this is something I pointed out. This is the specific scene that he totally lies about. And this is the Vault-Tec rep saying, I'm here today to tell you that because of your family's service to your country, again, the war that he just took part in against China, you have been pre-selected for entrance into the local Vault 111, and the reason why the Vault-Tec rep couldn't get in because he wasn't a part of the Vault-Tec experiment, which all of the vaults were, well, mostly all of them were a part of, or almost all of them had different types of experiments that were being taken on the population of those within those vaults. But anyway, you have 3 leading figures on the Fallout franchise, 2 of which were lead writers on multiple games, and then the co-creator of the franchise specifically saying that games are not a critique of capitalism, more so about war. And yes, people are free to interpret things however they want, but again, the central theme of Fallout is about war. I don't know why that's controversial. PlayStation's Concord will go down in history as one of the biggest flops ever. It remains to be seen if the game will eventually be revived and go free to play. We'll see what happens in that regard. I think it's extremely unlikely, especially because when it was free, when it had its open beta, there just was no interest at all there either. But this game, 8 years of development, cost over $100 million. That's not even including marketing. There's also the fact that this game sold about under 25,000 copies, had under 700 players on Steam, and within 2 weeks, it was dead. But the game will live on in the form of Amazon's game-inspired anthology series Secret Level, as it has been confirmed that Concord is still set to appear on TV this fall, which is definitely going to be very odd seeing that, but I don't think there's anything that could stop this. I mean, they've probably been working on this production for well over a year, so yeah, there is technically more Concord on the way. But in recent days, there's been a lot of talk about some of the developers and remarks that they've made about the game. This was one of the big remarks we talked about a couple weeks ago. It was specifically a Concord developer that I believe is now working on PUBG. They went on a tirade talking about talentless freaks in regards to haters of Concord. And this was the fact that a lot of people were mocking the game for its art design and some of the really bizarre decisions that they made with that game. But we've also seen in recent days some other information come about. We had Stephen Totillo in his newsletter revealing that in July, 2 Concord developers said launching games is always an absolute existential horror show. On the inside, it's complete and utter terror. We put in close to a decade for some. Now it's going to be out there. That's both exciting and terrifying. I think they really did know that this game was destined for failure. And this is July. This had to have been around the time that they had that first open beta. So they got some indication that a nightmare was coming, but obviously nobody expected this level of a nightmare. And now in some leaked tweets, we did see another Concord developer, one of the lead artists on the game, go on a tirade about the game's development. And first off, some people talking about this tweet in which they said pretty soon these weirdos will have no games to buy at all. Not exactly sure what tweet they were specifically responding to, but calling people weirdos just not a good look, especially the timing. And then we did see a couple of more tweets leaked from this developer saying, I was going to DM you after seeing this, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to say this here. A lot affected the art side of Concord, including design by committee, failure of some leadership to listen to the art team, etc. And look, 8 years of development, I have no idea how they went that long working on these specific designs, thinking that they were going to work, and ultimately making a hero shooter like this, it just never was going to click, especially because the hero shooter market has been oversaturated for years now, and you really do need to introduce something unique, something different to the market, and that is not what Concord gives, even if it had unique different characters other than, you know, Humpty Dumpty and Humpty Dumpty but they're 7 feet tall and all the other generic designs that are there. The character concept art team, includes myself, is going through an extremely difficult time emotionally, and some of the team no longer want to work in games, design characters, even do art anymore after this because of this. Posts like yours, though understandable, are unfortunately ill-timed. None of us know which way the wind will blow. At the studio, we are worried, sick, and terrified of the future. Not only that, but we have been shouldering the brunt of the emotional labor as executives, directors dodge most of the blame. Behind the scenes of all the talk about Concord and character designs, people's livelihoods are at risk, and there are very real financial consequences that might hurt us even more. That's just what I can say from our point of view. I'm not saying change course of anything. Us artists like being able to use social media to promote our work and get more jobs, but I am saying we see this and it does absolutely affect us since we just got our teeth kicked in. And look, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I do feel for a lot of the developers on this project because look, the gunplay, the gameplay, I think it's totally fine. It's enjoyable enough. It's not different enough to really stand out, but it was a totally fine experience with some of the most god-awful character design I've ever seen. And say what you want, but I think whoever was in charge of the art direction for Concord, I'm not sure if it was this individual or somebody else, they should be fired. They probably shouldn't be working on games again just because of how awful it was. I have no idea how they thought this was going to be successful, and I have no idea how the executives, how management at PlayStation thought that this was going to be successful. This was a game destined for disaster, and ultimately that's exactly what happened. And another thing I will say, a couple of years ago, Battlefield was mocked because they had an entire event mocking the criticism that they were getting for Battlefield 5, and the very real complaints and criticisms that they were getting with the historical accuracy of that game. And here with Concord, you have one developer calling individuals haters, talentless freaks, and then you have this this one, calling people that are critiquing character designs as weirdos. Just one of those instances that you're not helping yourself by talking on social media, and it definitely paints a very negative picture of the developers of Firewalk and the fact that maybe they aren't at all listening to the criticism that they have with these character designs. And a lot of reviewers, a lot of gaming websites are not helping the case by not bringing this up, because this is a major factor for why this game did fail. Star Wars Outlaws had what can only be described as a controversial lead up to its release. There was a lot of critique with its gameplay, with the trailers, with the monetization that Ubisoft was aiming for, and ultimately when the game did release, we saw reviews coming from critics. It was not great. As you can see on OpenCritic, it has a 76 critic average, with only 68% of critics recommending the game. That's fine, but for, I guess, a massive game like this, I'm sure Ubisoft, and they actually did say they expected much better reviews than this, but ultimately there was just a lot of flaws within Star Wars Outlaws, a lot of things that a lot of individuals, including myself, just really did not find myself enjoying. Specifically, the way that they went about stealth. It is one of the most damaging parts of the game, the insta-stealth. It's horrible. And then the fact that the narrative, the characters, it just wasn't flowing for me, and it didn't flow for a lot of people. And we actually did see, specifically with the stealth, we saw that Star Wars Outlaws unfair instant fail stealth missions, a mistake, Dev admits, patch due next week, and that has come about just in recent days, and that is now something that can be considered fixed, but it may be too little too late at this point. And right now, Star Wars Outlaws is suffering, as Ubisoft stock took a major dip, a 10-year low after lukewarm Star Wars Outlaws launch. And specifically, this report coming from Reuters is what can only be described as damaging. Game developer Ubisoft slides amid muted reception for Star Wars Outlaws. A sluggish performance of its two recent releases, including the long-awaited Star Wars Outlaws. And one analyst from JP Morgan saying Star Wars Outlaws has struggled to meet our sales expectations despite positive critical reviews. And then the same analyst did continue further, saying he lowered his sales expectations for Outlaws by 2 million units to 5.5 million units in the year through March 2025. And with this being the first open world Star Wars game ever, so-called, you would think that this would have, no matter what, gotten massive interest, but that has not happened at all. And this is a total disaster for Ubisoft, which was banking on this game to be massive for them. As you can see right now, we even have analysts saying even after the 48% drop at Ubisoft, I won't be buying their stock, which is just crazy and shows how in the gutters they are and how reliant they are on Assassin's Creed Shadows, which comes later this year, which has also had a massively controversial lead up to its release. And then from VG Charts, we have this story: Star Wars Outlaws in the UK sold about half of Assassin's Creed Mirage's sales. Again, this is just more and more bad news and points to the fact that this game is massively underperforming. This is information coming from Game Industry's Christopher Dring saying Star Wars Outlaws UK figures were lower than I expected, digital and physical, via GSD. But did a fair bit more than Avatar, 52% more, about half as Assassin's Creed Mirage. Plenty of opportunity to drive more units on this one as we head into Q4. We'll see what happens, but so far things are as bad as they could be for Ubisoft, and we actually even saw an investor revolting against the company. What do I mean by that? Well, disgruntled Ubisoft investor calls on Assassin's Creed maker to go private as shares slump. And this is specifically what they said. Ubisoft at current state is mismanaged and shareholders are hostages of the Guillemot family members in Tencent who take advantage of them. This investor only holds about 1% in Ubisoft, but this is a PR disaster for the company as things just continue to get much, much worse for them. And look, it isn't even just Star Wars Outlaws this year, because Ubisoft has also had X-Defiant, which was supposed to be a Call of Duty competitor, and things have been tumbling badly lately. An exclusive coming from Insider Gaming revealed that the game is on borrowed time as player numbers decline rapidly, and it looks like it could be shutting down in the near future, which is unfortunate because they really expected this to have a presence within the shooter market, but that just has not happened at all. Within the last 5 years, this is their stock. They've lost about 84 to 87%. This is 2021, January to now, so about 3 years and a half, and yeah, this is just as bad as it gets for a company that is really just Assassin's Creed at this point. Anyway, longer video than usual, but a lot of different gaming news that I hadn't had the chance to tackle, so let me know your thoughts on everything that we discussed today down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.